My ex looked straight at me from her wedding stage and smiled. The problem wasn't the smile. The problem was that I knew exactly what it meant. She hadn't invited me to celebrate her big day. She had invited me to humiliate me in front of hundreds of people. But before her plan could succeed, the groom asked one simple question that changed everything. My name is Daniel Brooks and I am 34 years old. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Rachel. For almost 5 years, she was the center of my world. We talked about marriage. We planned our future. We spent holidays with each other's families. Everyone believed we would eventually get married. Honestly, I believed it too. Then one day, everything fell apart. Rachel started acting differently. She became distant. She spent more time on her phone. She canceled plans without explanation. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, she insisted everything was fine. I wanted to believe her. I trusted her. That trust turned out to be my biggest mistake. One Friday evening, she asked if we could meet at a restaurant near our apartment. I thought we were going out for dinner. Instead, she ended our relationship. Just like that. No warning. No real explanation. She simply said we wanted different things in life. I sat there stunned. 5 years together ended in less than 15 minutes. The next few months were brutal. I barely slept. I couldn't focus at work. Every place in town reminded me of her. Then the truth finally came out. Rachel had already been seeing someone else before our breakup. A successful businessman named Michael. Many people around us knew. I was one of the last people to find out. That discovery hurt more than the breakup itself. Not because she chose someone else. Because she lied. Because she made me feel like I had somehow failed when the reality was completely different. After that, I cut all contact. I deleted her number, blocked her social media accounts, and slowly moved on with my life. It wasn't easy, but year by year things improved. I built a successful career, made new friends, started enjoying life again. Then, 3 years later, something unexpected happened. A wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox. The moment I saw the sender's name, my heart skipped a beat. Rachel Morgan. I honestly laughed. Of all the people in the world, she was the last person I expected to hear from. I opened the envelope. Inside was an elegant invitation to her wedding. She was marrying Michael, the same man she had chosen over me. But there was also a handwritten note. Daniel, I really hope you'll come. It would mean a lot to me. I stared at those words for several minutes. Something felt wrong. Rachel and I hadn't spoken in years. We weren't friends. There was no reason for her to want me there. At first, I threw the invitation into the trash. Then curiosity got the better of me. Why invite me? What was the point? After thinking about it for nearly a week, I made a decision. I would go. Not because I cared about the wedding. Not because I wanted closure. I simply wanted answers. The wedding took place at a luxury resort outside the city. The venue was beautiful. Fresh flowers decorated every walkway. String lights hung from the trees. Everything looked expensive. As soon as I arrived, I noticed several familiar faces. Old friends, former coworkers. People who knew Rachel and me when we were together. The reactions I received were strange. Some guests looked surprised. Others looked uncomfortable. A few stared as if they couldn't believe I had actually shown up. One former friend approached me near the entrance. Daniel, you're here. I smiled politely. I was invited. His expression became awkward, almost guilty. That immediately raised questions. Before I could ask anything, the ceremony began. Everyone took their seats. A few minutes later, Michael walked onto the stage. Then Rachel appeared. She looked happy, confident, completely different from the woman I remembered. As she walked down the aisle, the guests stood and applauded. I stood too. For a moment, her eyes met mine, and then I saw it. A tiny smile, not a friendly smile, not a nervous smile. A satisfied smile, the kind of smile someone gives when a plan is working exactly as expected. At that moment, I knew something wasn't right. The ceremony ended without any problems. The couple exchanged vows. The guests cheered. Photos were taken. Everything appeared normal. But throughout the evening, I kept noticing people looking at me, whispering, watching, waiting. It felt like everyone knew something except me. Then, during the reception, I overheard 2 women talking near the dessert table. I can't believe she actually invited him. I know. She's been talking about this for months. My stomach tightened. Talking about what? The women noticed me and immediately stopped speaking. That confirmed my suspicion. Something was definitely planned. A few hours later, dinner ended and the speeches began. Rachel stood first. She thanked her parents, her friends, the wedding planners. Then she picked up the microphone again. The room became quiet. And suddenly, she looked directly at me. My heart dropped. A smile spread across her face. Before we finish tonight, she said, I'd like to acknowledge someone from my past. Every head in the room turned toward me. I immediately knew this wasn't going to end well. Rachel continued speaking while hundreds of eyes remained fixed on me, and with every sentence, I realized exactly why she had invited me. I wasn't there as a guest. I wasn't there as a friend. I was there to be part of a performance, a public reminder of the life she believed she had outgrown. But what happened next was something Rachel never expected, because before she could finish her plan, her groom stood up and asked a question that instantly silenced the entire room. The room fell completely silent. Rachel was still holding the microphone. Every guest was looking at her, and then Michael slowly stood from his chair. At first, I thought he was simply going to continue the speech. Instead, he looked directly at Rachel. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was confused. "Rachel," he said calmly, "before you continue, can I ask you something?" The atmosphere instantly changed. Rachel laughed nervously. "Of course." Michael glanced toward me, then back at her. "Why is Daniel really here?" A strange tension filled the room. Rachel's smile faded for a second before quickly returning. "What do you mean?" Michael folded his arms. "I mean exactly what I asked." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the servers had stopped walking. Michael continued. "When we made the guest list, you specifically insisted that Daniel should be invited." Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "He's part of my past. I thought it would be nice." Michael slowly shook his head. "No." His voice remained calm. "It wasn't like that." The guests exchanged nervous looks. Michael continued speaking. "For months you've mentioned him." Rachel's face became pale. "For months you've talked about whether he would come." A few people nearby lowered their eyes. It was obvious they knew exactly what he was talking about. Michael looked around the room. Several people even asked me tonight if Daniel showed up. Now the silence felt heavy. Rachel opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. Then Michael asked the question that changed everything. "If you're completely over him, why have you spent so much time thinking about him?" The room froze. Nobody expected that, not even me. Rachel stared at him. For the first time all evening, she looked genuinely shaken. "I don't know what you're talking about." Michael let out a quiet laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It sounded disappointed. "I think you do." He took a deep breath. Then he turned toward the guests. "I wasn't going to mention this tonight." Rachel's eyes widened. "Michael," but he continued. "3 weeks ago, I found old messages on Rachel's laptop." A wave of whispers spread through the room. Rachel looked horrified. Michael kept speaking. Messages between Rachel and her friends. Now every guest was listening carefully. "Do you know what they were discussing?" Nobody answered. They were discussing whether inviting Daniel would make him jealous. The room exploded with murmurs. Several people looked shocked. Others looked embarrassed. Rachel immediately grabbed the microphone. "That's not true." But her voice sounded weak. Michael looked at her. "Then tell them what the messages said." Rachel couldn't answer, because she knew he had seen them. Michael continued. "The messages weren't about celebrating our wedding." He paused. "They were about proving a point." The silence returned. Michael looked directly at me, then back at Rachel. "You wanted Daniel to see how successful your life had become." Rachel looked down. "You wanted him sitting in this room while everyone watched his reaction." More whispers spread through the crowd. I could see guests exchanging uncomfortable looks. Some were clearly hearing this for the first time. Others looked like they had known all along. Michael's voice became softer. "What I don't understand is why." Rachel remained silent. He took another step forward. "You ended the relationship." No answer. "You moved on." Still nothing. "You built a new life." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Then Michael asked another question. One that hit even harder than the first. "If you're truly happy with me, why did you need his approval?" The room became completely still. I had never seen anything like it. Rachel looked as though she might cry. For several seconds she said nothing. Then finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know." Michael nodded slowly. That answer told everyone everything, because deep down she knew exactly why. She had spent years convincing herself she had won. Won the breakup, won the better life, won the better relationship. But people who are truly happy don't spend years trying to prove it. They simply live it. Rachel wiped away tears. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Michael sighed. "But you did." His eyes moved toward me. "You hurt him." Then he looked at himself. "And maybe you hurt us too." Nobody knew what to say. The perfect wedding atmosphere had completely disappeared. The expensive decorations, the beautiful flowers, the elegant music. None of it mattered anymore. The truth had taken over the room. For the first time all night, Rachel turned toward me. She looked different now. Not confident, not victorious. Just human. Just someone carrying old regrets. "I'm sorry, Daniel." The words sounded genuine. Maybe for the first time in years. I looked at her quietly. Honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. That anger had disappeared long ago. What I felt was something closer to relief. Relief that I finally understood. For years I had wondered why our relationship ended the way it did. Why everything felt so cold, why she seemed determined to prove something after it was over. Now I had my answer. Sometimes people leave relationships not because they find happiness. Sometimes they leave chasing an idea of happiness. And sometimes they spend years trying to convince themselves they made the right choice. I stood from my chair. Every eye in the room followed me. Rachel looked nervous. Michael looked exhausted. I simply smiled, not because I was happy about the situation, because I finally felt free from it. "I appreciate the apology," I said. Rachel nodded silently. Then I looked at both of them. "I genuinely hope you find happiness." The room remained quiet. I grabbed my jacket, and before leaving I said one final thing. "The best way to move forward is to stop competing with the past." Nobody responded. But judging by the expressions around the room, everyone understood. I walked out of the reception hall. The cool night air hit my face. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. Not because someone else had been exposed, not because anyone had lost, but because I no longer carried questions that belonged to the past. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A message from an old friend who had attended the wedding. It said, "You handled that better than most people would have." I smiled. Then I put the phone away. Because the truth was simple. The greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. The greatest victory is reaching a point where you no longer need to prove anything at all. And if there's one lesson I learned from that wedding, it's this. Never measure your happiness by making comparisons with someone else's life. Real happiness doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need former partners to witness it. When you're truly at peace, you stop looking backward and start appreciating what's in front of you. Sometimes the person who seems to have lost actually gains the most valuable thing of all, the freedom to move on. And that freedom is worth more than any victory people try to display to the world.